Hey guys, on today's show, I want to cover some updates, some little bit of news and what's going on in my life. And I want to cover for the first time, I'm going to try and do a viewer question. So that's right here, right now on Ham Radio for Non-Techies. Well, welcome back, guys. Like I said, I wanted to discuss a couple little updates around the shack here and some news from me. And you know, I got some cool things for newbies that are getting into ham radio. If you're looking to get into ham radio, some little advice. And like I said, for the first time, I'm going to take a viewer question, because this question came through by a viewer on one of my previous videos recently. I was like, I can sit here and I can write paragraphs about this question, or I can just quickly do a nice little video and really sum up my idea, my thought process on that. So first of all, over the weekend, I had this crazy idea on Friday around 11 o'clock that I'm going to, upgrade my desk and go from what I had before. Remember before what I had, that's everything's kind of cramped and everything's all stacked on each other and stuff like that. And it looked like kind of like a glorified park bench. So I decided to tear it all apart, repurpose some of the pieces, and go buy some new pieces and kind of redesign the desk the way I wanted it. So let's pop over to my desktop real quick, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is the new setup here. I added a much wider base. So now instead of being 48 inches, it's now 60 inches wide. I wanted something where I could have nice, heavy supports to hold up the radios, have them all spread out, have everything kind of in line, and hopefully minimize the amount of mess that's back on the back end there, which you're not seeing, which is all the wires and stuff. In addition, the criteria meant I also had to have some place to put my laptop that would allow me still use the webcam without any obstruction. So if I do any lives downstairs, if I'm on, doing FT8 off the guys, I want to have some place where I can have everything all set up and ready to go and not be so cramped up, have to constantly be looking for things. So this seemed like a good solution to it. So let me go through some of the things here. What you're seeing here with the shelf, the top shelf area, what I did is I went down to Home Depot and they had these stair treads. And with wood being as expensive as it is right now, this seemed to be much more viable. It's a decent pine. You got to kind of fish through and find the best piece and have a whole bunch of knots in them. But they're like 11, 12 bucks a pop. So I picked up one of those. I picked up a couple extra 2x4s. So I'm extending the base of the desk from 48 to 60 inches. So I had to replace those parts. But these stair treads are 1 inch thick pine. Very easy to cut, easy to sand. They take stain well. They take top coat well. Everything was great about this. Took no total all in all to get this thing built on Friday from 11 a.m. I got it finished around 1 o'clock in the morning. So I was out there for quite a bit of time. I came in every once in a while just trying to take a break from the heat. But, this was a very viable solution for me. But one cool thing I wanted to show you is the base of the table, the actual tabletop. This is actually 2 sheets of plywood. And I did a little trick. I went down to my local Woodcraft and picked up this stuff called edge banding. And since I bought maple plywood, I went ahead and bought some maple edge banding. And it's just a 2-inch thick piece of thin strip of wood that's in a roll. And on one side of it, it has this adhesive. So you cut out what you need after you get your piece put together. And I screwed this whole thing together and got it all set up. And I went back with my saw and made sure all 4 edges were nice and flush. You cut out the length you need. You lay it on top of the seam between the 2 pieces of plywood. And you get your iron that you use to iron your shirts with. You set it on the cotton setting, and you run it across the edge banding. What it does, it melts the glue and seeps it into the pores of the plywood and adheres to it. So what you get in the end with a little bit of sanding, a little bit of very little sanding, this stuff's super thin. It's like, I don't know, 1/30 or 3/32 of an inch or something, not very thick. What you get in the end, though, is what looks like a solid piece of maple, and it looks really, really nice. It's one of the best pictures I could get for you here. So I did that. I did a little staining. I want to make sure I had my monitor up really high and away from the radios. And, this is what I came up with. And I think it came out pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm still kind of playing around with how I'm going to, what am I going to put in little cubbies everywhere. But you see, I've got my rig expert over here on the left side. And I've got my keyboard, which goes from my little Raspberry Pi computer up here, but I got my 991, my 991, my 7300 here. I kept the tuner up on top. The only thing I decided to put in the cubby hole to get it out of the way was the power supply. But this all seems to work for me. So I was pretty happy with that. So that was the first thing I did. And like I said, it took a little while. I had to, cut all the pieces out. I drew out a quick sketch what I wanted, built the thing, used pocket screws for everything. So there's no massive joinery involved. I wanted to keep it plain and simple, but I needed to be sturdy, and you could basically hit this thing with a truck and it ain't going to go anywhere. So that was the first thing. Recently, I told you guys I started learning Morse code, and I joined the Long Island CW Club, and been with them for about 2 weeks now, a little over 2 weeks. And I took the first class. They taught us the first 4 letters and gave us a little extra letter for extra credit. And I went through that for about the last week, and I started getting bored with that, so I kept moving up and moving up and moving up. Well, by the time we had our next class, which was last night, I was already 15 letters in. But I went ahead and I went back. I'm going ahead and I'm moving ahead because the class is only, they're 1 week apart for the particular class I'm in right now. And I didn't want to jump ahead too far because I want to take my time and learn this. This is not something you're going to rush through. It's not something you're just going to do overnight and just, grasp and get. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to get everything done the way I needed it to be done without any issues or problems. So anyway, going through the classes, I learned the first 15, and I went back to our class last night, and they were still doing the first 5. He added 4 more. Well, it was nice to have that refresher to go back and do those other ones just in case I forgot some, but I really haven't. I've gone through the way that I'm learning everything now. I'm running through with the software that they told us to grab, and I am utilizing that and running the tests with that, and then using that to actually key the different letters. And if I get something messed up, I'll go back and correct that until I get it right. Just keep doing it over and over and over every single day, probably a couple times a day. I still say, if you guys are interested in getting into the whole Morse code thing, if you want to jump down that rabbit hole with me or whatever, it's probably not that bad of an idea. They are a very good group of people to get in with. They take their time with teaching you everything you need to know. If you have a question or a problem, if you get stuck behind, they're more than willing to help you out and make sure that you are up with the class. If you really have problems, you can actually get on a private chat with one of the instructors, I think, on a different Zoom meeting, and they'll actually work with you one-on-one if you're a member. So definitely worth checking out. Again, I'm not trying to push the whole CW thing, but I'm actually having a lot of fun with it. I think it's really cool. I'm learning a lot, and I'm just kind of excited that down the road, I'm actually going to get to utilize this and actually jump on the CW bandwagon and join the other people doing Morse code. I don't know how some of these guys do it as fast as they do, and I probably never get to be 30, 40 words a minute, and I don't plan on trying. But I think 15 or 20 words a minute is probably about my good speed there. And that's what they kind of suggest anyway. Okay, so I want to get to the viewer question, and like I said, I don't normally do viewer questions, or I haven't done them yet, but I wanted to tackle this one. So this question came in from Dan, and he asks, what are your thoughts on the Kenwood TM D710G versus the FTM 400 versus the ICOM 7100? Whew, that's a lot of stuff to say. He says he likes the idea of the 7100 as a base station. He likes the screen of the FTM 400, but leaning towards the Kenwood for the tactility of the buttons and just the functionality. Well, Dan, here's the best way I can. It's really hard for me to explain or give you an answer on that because everybody's different. Everybody has a different way of what they want out of radios and all kinds of stuff. So what I did is I set up a quick little presentation. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on this, but there's some things you can think about. This goes for anybody. If you're new to ham radio, or if you're kind of on the fence, you're thinking about, adding another radio to your collection, here's my suggestions. So let's go to the desktop again. So criteria when choosing a radio. So the first thing I would think about, this is something I don't know when I get these questions from the viewers. What license class are you currently? Are you a tech? Are you a general? Are you an extra? I don't know these things because those things make different they give you different options and allow you to expand or control what you're going to buy as a radio if you're going to want to use it. You can buy any radio you want and listen all you want. You just can't hold down the button and transmit on certain radios unless you're on the right band or you have a certain class of license. Number 2, what are your ambitions in ham radio? Are you happy where you are, or do you want to upgrade in the future? So if you're a technician now, but you're actually actively studying for your general to open up more of those bands to you, then you want to maybe look into a better HF radio, something that has a wider range of frequencies and things. What is going to be the primary use of the radio? Is it going to be a base station, a mobile radio? You can use for portable ops like SOTA, POTA. So you got to consider those things as well. These are all things you got to kind of, I mean, I can't possibly give you a be-all, end-all solution to a question like this without knowing more detail. So I'm just going through how my thought process works, and these are the questions I was asking myself when I was trying to answer his question. Number 4, I've covered this a lot before. What is your budget? Have you accounted for the accessories? You know, buying the radio for $1,000 or $500, whatever you plan on buying, you still got to buy coax. You still got to figure out if you got some antennas you want to get for it. What are the little accessories you're going to need? If you're going to hook up to your computer to do FT8, you need some accessory cables. If you're using mobile radios or like the 891s, or actually any of the radios, are you going to need the RT system software to do some programming and, you know, put that on an SD card and things? So there's a lot of stuff you got to consider and think about that, again, I just don't know. So you got to know what your budget is. And number 5, do you want an all-in-one solution, HF, VHF, UHF in a single radio like the 991 Alpha or like the 7100? Or do you want to maybe grab a dedicated VHF, UHF radio and have a dedicated HF radio? Looking back now, and again, I keep saying I'm going to do this video because I just got my 7300 recently, I probably would have separated the two. I like the all-in-one stuff. I love my 991, but for HF, I really like my 7300 now. It's become my new favorite HF radio. So you have to kind of go through and decide. You want an all-in-one solution that you can grow into and just have, you know, that if you're looking for that be-all, end-all, one radio solution, something like an all-bander radio might be the way to go, but just know it's going to have limitations to it. And of course, number 6, like I said a minute ago, if you're going to be using HF a lot, you want an HF-only rig. So you have to go through these questions on your own and figure out exactly what you need or what you want out of your radio. Only you know this. I can only speculate based on the question. But since you asked the question, I went ahead and did a little side-by-side comparison here. So here we have the Kenwood TMD710G, we have the Yaesu FTM 400 XDR, and the ICOM 7100. So I didn't pick a bunch of criteria on this. It's kind of went to the main things based on some of the stuff that we talked about. So bands, the first 2 are VHF, UHF only. The ICOM 7100 is HF, VHF, UHF. Again, I don't know if you're using this as a base station, if you want to mount this in your car, if you want to make this for a portable ops radio. I don't know the situation or the criteria of what you're basing your decision on. The first 2 are both 50-watt power, and the ICOM 7100 runs at 100 watts. Touchscreen, no on the Kenwood, and yes on the other 2. Color screen, no on the Kenwood. Yes on the Yaesu, and no on the ICOM. Now, this may or may not make a big difference to you. I kind of like the idea of the color touchscreen. It's the 21st century. Why not? But there are advantages to having the 7100. It might not be a pretty touchscreen, but it's a pretty efficient radio. So keep that in mind. SD card slot. From what I can tell, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, the Kenwood TMD710G does not have a card slot for a micro SD card. However, the other 2 do, which allows you to store your settings, do upgrades, backups, all kinds of stuff. So if that might be something you want to consider as well. GPS, APRS on the first 2, the Kenwood and the Yaesu, and of course the ICOM does GPS and D-Star. So depending if you're a system fusion kind of guy and or gal and want to do APRS and all that kind of stuff, you might want to stick with the Yaesu. If you just want to do PS APRS, you'll have the Kenwood or the Yaesu are probably going to be fine. Now, keep in mind also, and I'm going to be completely upfront with you, I don't know a whole lot about the Kenwood aside from the spec sheets that I read and was doing a little bit of research online about these things before I compiled this data. And there's not a whole lot here to begin with. I'm just kind of touching on a couple few differences and things that might help you to make a decision. So you get 1,000 memory channels with the Kenwood. You get 500 per band with the 400. So I guess that means 1,000. And the ICOM 7100, you get 505 for the regular bands, and you get 700 memory channels for the D-Star feature. So again, you've got to figure out what it is you want. Price ranges, all right? Currently, at the time of this recording, the Kenwood at HRO is running $669. The Yaesu 400 XDR is at $590, and the 7100 is running at $930. This goes back to budget. If you have the money to spend and you want to have an all-band or radio, and you want something that's going to be a little bit cheaper than, say, a $991, the ICOM 7100 might be the way to go. Now, if you're going to be putting these in a vehicle, as you can see, the first two are set up to go in a vehicle. They have the detachable faces that you can then mount on a little bracket that'll sit in your car, like I got my 400 in my truck, and the same looks like with the Kenwood. You can mount the 7100 in a vehicle. It's going to be a little more creative on your part. You don't want it just sitting on your dashboard in the blazing heat, depending on where you live, or being a big object in your window that says, hey, come steal me. So these are things you want to consider where you're going to be putting it. The limitations are on the Kenwood and Yaesu, your VHF, UHF. If that's all you want and you're a technician and you don't plan on doing any HF stuff, pick one of those two. You'll probably be just fine. But if you want a little more expansion, or if you're studying to get up into the higher licenses in ham radio, like general or extra, you're going to want some little bit more oomph behind it. So maybe you want a radio you can grow into. That's where the ICOM 7100 would come in. So, that's pretty much my spiel on that. You really got to base your decision on your needs. I can give you suggestions all day long, but I don't know what your situation is. I don't know what your thinking is, where you are, how much you want to spend, all these different things. So you got to kind of just do that on your own and figure that out. But what I will say is, use, like I tell my students, use one of your free Google searches and research these things. Go look up videos on each one and see what people like and don't like about them. That's what I do. When I go online and look, I'm looking for a new electronic part for my ham radio stuff. I'll go hit up YouTube and find some of the different channels that I know and trust, and I'll sit there and watch their stuff, and I'll kind of be objective as possible and just kind of see what they like about it, what they don't like about it, and I'll write down little notes. I'll go to the next radio and find a video on that, and then I'll just, of course, I look at budget, and then from there I'll make up a decision. So that's something you might want to consider. So the last thing I want to discuss here is, and this is for also for new people. When you're learning ham radio and you don't really understand what it is you're being told. I mean, I told you before, I had a lot of struggle in the beginning of getting into ham radio, trying to understand all the different things that are going on. The books were still very technical. It seemed like there's a whole bunch of stuff. That's what kept me out of ham radio for many, many years. I just thought it was way too technical. I didn't want to get into that at the time. And, with all the recent stuff that happened last year and everything else, I found myself with more time than I needed. So I eventually got into it, and here I am today. So here's my suggestion for that. You're going to be in a certain state of confusion when you get into ham radio. There's always going to be questions. It's a brand new thing. It's a technical thing. Coming from ham radio for non-techies, right? It's a technical hobby, and it's got a lot of technical stuff in it that can be a little overwhelming. The way I would say to go about it is find a couple channels. And the channels that I started off watching and learning from were channels like Coffee and Ham Radio. These guys do I think they do a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning spiel. They get together and they talk about stuff. And a lot of times for many, many months, they were talking about things I had no clue what they were talking about. I'm sitting there going, what is all this? What does that mean? How do you know these things? I thought they're like wizards. Well, over time, as I found more interest in things I wanted to learn about in ham radio and did my research on it and read up on it a little bit and kept watching them talk about this stuff, it started to make sense. I started seeing correlations between what I was trying to do and what they were talking about, and seeing it, they actually, they'll apply what they're talking about in the video sometimes, You know, they'll do videos on, like, you know, certain kinds of tuners or certain kinds of other products and stuff, and just kind of just talking about it over and over again. You get used to hearing it, and if you do a little research, look up some of the words you don't understand, and get an understanding for those words, then you start understanding what's going on. So Coffee and Ham Radio is one of the ones I highly recommend, because you get them 3 days a week, and they all have their respective channels as well, which they talk about all kinds of stuff. Another one is Ham Nation. It's run by Josh. Josh Nass hosts that over on Ham Radio Crash Course now. Ham Nation always has a good panel of experts and Elmers and people that are way more into this than we are at the moment. And they've always got good advice on things, and it's just something you can kick back and watch. You know, if you're out in the garage working, or you're, you know, in another room and just doing stuff, you can have that on in the background. It's not completely visual all the time. A lot of times you can just listen to it as if it were a podcast. So having those on there is a great way to just kind of learn stuff. And obviously, and not to, you know, again, plug another channel and take you away from mine, but Josh has a group, or has a YouTube channel called Ham Radio Crash Course. And, you know, what he talks about is in the name of his channel there. So he does, you know, lives every Saturday night, and he'll do an hour show based on a topic that is chosen by the patrons or whatever like that. And he'll discuss and go kind of in depth on some of the topics of whatever people chose. But he also does lots of reviews, stuff, does lots of how-to videos. He explains things in a really, really good way that I think will help out a lot of people. So if you are new to ham radio or thinking about getting into ham radio, check out these 3 channels I told you about. That's Coffee and Ham Radio's, Ham Nation, and the Ham Radio Crash Course. Again, not to pull you away from my channel, because I try to bring you guys information too, but they know more stuff than I do at this point. And getting yourself used to hearing the terms and getting yourself used to the lingo in ham radio, you'll start to find things that interest you. You'll research it again on your own, hopefully, and that will expand your knowledge in the hobby. So I hope that will help you out a little bit, and I hope that you'll utilize those resources. Anyway, guys, I don't want to make this a really long video today. I just wanted to cover those few things. I do appreciate you joining me on the journey of insanity. And, you know, remember, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. If you're old and been watching my videos for a while and just haven't hit that button, please. It helped me out. And I will keep rocking and rolling with some more videos. But, yeah, so you guys have a good week. I'll be, I got some more videos coming out. I got another board of videos here I gotta go shoot. What I'm doing now is I'm taking more time with my videos and making sure I try to come up as much information as possible while still keeping it somewhat short. Anywho, enough of that crap. You guys have a great week. I will see you soon. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.